Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Duke with The New American, and I'd like to talk to you today about what's on my mind in the news, and that is billionaires. The very controversial phrase billionaires. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the economically challenged economics degree-holding congresswoman from New York, has recently come out and said there should be no billionaires, and that she is parroting her mentor, Bernie Sanders. There should be no billionaires. Well, that implies that all billionaires are the same billionaire. In typical reductive AOC style, the fact is that all billionaires are not the same. And I'd like to tell you a tale of two billionaires. It was the best of billions. It was the worst of billions, right? A tale of two billionaires. I'd like to contrast Donald Trump and Michael Bloomberg. Now, it's true that I'm not quite sure you would classify the wealth of Donald Trump in the category of billions. It's substantial, and certainly enough to make him a 1%er, but I'm not sure he's quite the billionaire. But over the years, over the decades, he has made and lost and made again billions of dollars. So I'd like to contrast two billionaires. Michael Bloomberg, and Donald Trump. In eerie ways, they seem very similar, right? Both largely outsiders to politics. Bloomberg made his billions before he became the mayor of New York, and he hasn't really held any other position. Trump, of course, had no political ambitions or positions prior to becoming president of the United States. Both men hail from New York and forge their careers largely in New York. Both men are independents a little bit. Bloomberg was a Republican for a while. Nobody really believed that before becoming an independent. Donald Trump spent much of the 80s and 90s courting Democrat politicians. He was cozy with the Clintons, for instance, especially when Clinton's term of office was over and they moved back to New York. Donald Trump is a smart man. If you're going to get anything done politically in New York City, you're going to have to court Democrats. It's pretty much all there is. And him becoming a Republican very late in the cycle of his political career suggests something, independent about him in the same way that Bloomberg was an independent, a Republican who became an independent. Now he's running on the Democrat ticket. They're both outsiders in that regard. They're both highly polarizing figures. They're both men of very strong opinions. They're both men who know how to get things done. But don't let those similarities strike you. Don't buy the AOC routine, right? That all billionaires are evil because they're billionaires. Let's talk about Bloomberg for a second. Michael Bloomberg is a guy who has had some of the most outrageously bigoted things. We've heard this about Trump too, right? That he said actually misogynist things. He's said actually racist things, Bloomberg. He's spoken out very mockingly about transgender people in ways that Donald Trump has not done. He is, for all accounts, a bit of a thug and a bully. He's also, and this is one of the biggest differences between Trump and Bloomberg, he is somebody who uses his money to stop other people from making money. He is somebody like, I would argue, Zuckerberg. I would argue Bill Gates. I would argue the Warren Buffetts of the world. These people, the Steve Jobs of the world, who make their billions in the free society that is America, that these men use their strengths and their talents and their abilities to amass major fortunes, who once they get rich then want to stop anybody else from having that same success. They want to keep their billions while closing the door to other people being able to do the same thing. They want to thwart the American dream. He's also a remarkable censor, Bloomberg. I remember when he was back mayor of New York, he wanted to ban sodas, Cokes and Pepsis. He wanted to ban sodas beyond 12 ounces or 16 ounces, I believe it was, because it was bad for you, too much sugar. So he wanted to force every establishment, every 7-Eleven in the city of Manhattan to not even be allowed to serve sizes of soda beyond his prescribed amount. Here's a guy who was going after pizza places because of the caloric intake of pizza, trying to put pressure on fast food pizza joints to have to undergo all kinds of regulations before they can sell pizzas. He's a guy across the board who wants to use the power of big government, use his money to silence others, to repress others, to take away freedoms. We know for a fact, and this is perhaps the most galling aspect of Mayor Bloomberg, is his inveterate hatred of the Second Amendment. Despite the fact that his bodyguards are all armed, that his buildings are all well protected by armed security guards, that when he was mayor, he had a battery of armed men who protected him from the vicissitudes of the underbelly of Manhattan. Nevertheless, he wants to come for your guns. He wants to buy and use his money to promote anti-gun legislatures. Matter of fact, we just found out about Bloomberg that out of his pockets, they are paying lawyers in various state legislatures to lobby the states to get rid of the Second Amendment. He's paying them to do that. It's a remarkable thing in a negative way. We also know this about Michael Bloomberg with his billions. He is not above sidling up to communist. What is it about rich American billionaires? And I will cite the Bill Gateses and the Steve Jobs. I will cite the Michael Bloombergs. What is it about our American billionaire class that so many of them have such fondness for repressive socialist and communist regimes? There's a horrifying interview not that long ago when Michael Bloomberg was on the hot seat. He was being asked, why is it that you censor the news for the Chinese market? That your Bloomberg News, which is a worldwide organization that has its offices in China, that has at one point had an entire bureau that was dedicated to reporting Chinese news, but reporting it in a way that he allowed the Chinese government to censor it. And he's in this interview with a reporter, he basically makes the argument that, hey, all different countries have rules. The United States, the freedom of speech of the United States is not any better than the repressive speech codes of China. And if we're going to do business in China, we're going to have a bureau in China. We're going to tell the news in China, to China, and for the world. Then we have to follow their rules. Literally said this, that if China wants to censor us, if China will only let us report on certain things in certain ways, then that's our obligation to do that. We have an obligation to let the Chi-Coms, arguably outside of North Korea, the most repressive government force in the world today, lecturing Bloomberg, has the right to lecture and tell Bloomberg what and how he can say. This is pretty staggering. There's a tale of two billionaires here. The thing I love about Donald Trump is he's proud to be a billionaire, and he readily acknowledges that he inherited money and that he lost and gained that money back. He grew that money. He's a president who does not take a salary. He is not a president, when he was an individual, he was not an individual who was trying to stunt the rights and the opportunities of others. He was always about expanding other people's rights when it comes to wealth and money. And now you have him as the president running possibly against Bloomberg. This seems to be the Democrat solution, right? Democrats are very nervous about Bernie Sanders, as they should be. I should say elite Democrats are worried about Bernie Sanders, and they should be. He's going to be a tough sell to middle America, to southern America, to sane America. And so it's amazing how quickly Democrats are beginning to mobilize around Bloomberg. He's already bought himself onto the debate stage, replacing another billionaire liberal, Steyer, who rotates off right now because he has no charisma, didn't have enough money, and no one wanted to listen to him. And he was actually a white male billionaire who the liberal identity politics people rejected in favor now of Bloomberg. And you're already beginning to hear this in left-wing circles. Bloomberg, for all his warts, for all his misogyny, for all his racist statements, his his frisk and release policies of African and Hispanic men in Manhattan, this litany, all the things that Trump's accused of being, without a lot of evidence, Bloomberg has actually done. He's governed Manhattan, which is like governing a state in many ways. And in that governor position, he has behaved awfully. He has a horrible record on speech, a horrible record on wealth creation, a horrible record on the Second Amendment. He has treated minorities with contempt. He mocks people who disagree with him. And I get it. This is the profile of Trump. But Trump is pro-wealth. He is pro-country. He is pro-speech. He is pro-Second Amendment. He is pro-protecting American workers. Bloomberg wants open borders. Bloomberg wants America to be transformed, like all left-wing billionaires do, into some kind of vague, ugly, and repressive version of the Soviet Union. No, not socialist. No, not at all. Democrat socialist, right? As if those two words now, there's a lot of gap between them. There may have been a time when socialist and Democrat were far enough apart that you could distinguish them. But when you put those two words together right now, sadly, you get exactly the same thing. It's a tautology. It's a complete tautology. The socialists are the Democrats. The Democrats are the socialists. A tale of two billionaires. I'm Dr. Duke with The New American, and this has been my take on the news. Be sure to go to thenewamerican.com for all the essential news for freedom-loving Americans everywhere.